Hi everyone, Monday again, weekend wasn't long gone round, and today we're not exactly cooking, but we are going to churn butter. So what I have here is an original blow glass butter churn. Traditionally butter making was done once a week, and it would have been the job of the housewife. For the week coming up prior to it, the cow would have been milked, and the milk would have been kept, or some of it would have been kept one side, and would have been stored in one of these large bowls, which is an earthenware bowl, salt glazed on the inside, and that's called a crock. So you had a crock, usually had a wider top on them, you put your milk in, cream rises to the top, you skimmed your cream off, and that's what you used to make your butter once a week. So the butter was, country butter as it was known, was a slightly different flavour because it was stronger. The cream would have been slightly on the side of sour, which if it is, it churns a lot faster. It would also be at room temperature. Churning cream that's at room temperature is also a lot faster. So these crocks came in a number of sizes. There's another one down on Alan's home place. It's about twice the size, much larger. But that is an original earthenware crock. So that would be the first thing that they had, and skim the cream off that. And then they would have a churn. So depending on your prosperity, the type of churn you would have a basic churn, which is called a dash churn, which is like a large drum, something like a creamery can, with a wooden paddle with holes in it on the end of a handle, and you'd push that up and down. The cream came up through the holes, and that caused that to churn. Bigger farms would have had an end over end churn, so they were a large barrel shaped churn mounted on a stand. You turn them and the milk splashed around inside it, and it had a glass little window in it that you could look in and see what was going on. Then you had tabletop churns, small wooden tabletop churns with a paddle in them. They were used as well. And then you had the glass blow churn, and these came in a number of different sizes, from quite small ones up to this one. I'm not sure what the capacity is, possibly a gallon. So this is one that I bought. We have the tradition. We have Alan's grandmother's one. We have his on both sides. So we have the family ones, but rather than use them, I prefer to use one that I bought purely because if anything happens it doesn't have any sentimental value. The other thing that you need, ideally, are a set of butter spades. So these are a Kilner set of butter spades. They're modern ones. You can buy them from Kilner, who've been manufacturing since 1842. They wrote it on the handle for me, it's very convenient. So they make butter spades, butter pats, butter paddles, loads of different names depending on where you were in Ireland. So you can still buy those. I have some old ones as well. And you need salt to flavour your butter. And this as well is Alan's grandmother's wooden plate that she used for her butter making. So she'd have shaped her butter on that. So you can see the extensive amount of wear that got, and it's quite bleached from all the washing. So that's a little plate that was used. Butter, sometimes if you were selling butter and you were making it to manufacture, you would have your own stamp to put on your butter. Now it's the one thing I haven't been able to get is an original butter stamp. So we made one, and there's a little flower design carved into the bottom of that one. So that's my butter stamp. And this is an original French butter mould. So you can see it's got a beautiful shape on the inside, and you can make your butter in it and then lift off the sides. The bottom comes out as well. Now I've soaked it in water. Haven't used it before, but I have soaked it in water because everything you're going to use, you leave them soaked in cold water so the butter doesn't stick to them. I have a jug of cold water for the wash of the butter, and that's pretty much it. Now I have put, before we started, so that I wouldn't be standing here forever, I'm hoping this is going to work, it was all the cream that I had. I have put just over a litre of cream in here, and now if you're doing butter making for a demonstration, you would have to use pasteurised cream. because for health and safety and all the other reasons that we have to do these things. So it's pasteurised cream that's in here from the supermarket. The higher the butter fat content in the pasteurised cream, the more butter you will get from it. And the byproduct obviously is the buttermilk. So I've been turning this for about 5 minutes before we started. And just see if it's gone past cream stage and is starting to turn yellow. Now if I took the cream straight out of the fridge before I started, it would be harder to turn because it's colder. So I took it out a little bit earlier to let it come to nearer to room temperature. So I'm just going to keep turning this and hopefully we'll get to see it. Yeah, see it turning a more yellow colour, and that's the fat beginning to extract itself from the cream, and it will start to come together then and separate. So you have your cream and your buttermilk. So that'll be the two things that we will have in here. It'll separate into both of them. Now on bigger farms where there were more cows being milked and where butter was being sold, they would have had a machine called a separator. Now there is one somewhere in the farmyard. We haven't looked at it in a while. We don't know what condition it was in. Again, it belonged to Alan's grandmother. Her and her mother before her used to make butter to sell at market. So they had a separator and it worked with centrifugal force. So it turned very fast. And the milk was poured into that and the centrifugal force separated the cream from the milk. So that was a much faster method of doing it than what would have been done in a small traditional farmhouse where you were just making butter for your family. So apologies, I was a few minutes late. I was looking for my proper wraparound apron and I was looking for a head square, but I couldn't find one, so we got the next best to make it look as authentic as possible. I even managed to find some enamel little containers and my old Ponder mug for to taste the buttermilk after. So with a bit of a route around for all the old-fashioned bits. And it was traditional. The farmers would have drank the buttermilk. It was used for making the brown bread, but it was also considered a refreshing drink. So the farmers would have drank the buttermilk as well. So you could have a mug of buttermilk. And where's help when I need it? Traditionally as well, if you come into a house and the churning was happening, it was considered bad luck not to take your turn at the churn. So if I could find my guys anywhere this morning, I don't know where Alan even is, Owen is down the yard as well. If I could find them this morning, they could quite happily come here and have a little run on this. So it's quite a slow process. Now, I could have went and just got the food mixer, and if you want to make your butter at home, just get your food mixer, pop your cream into the bowl, put in your balloon whisk or what you would use to whip cream or a sponge cake, and do the exact same process. But for the sake of being authentic this morning, I decided we would take out the churn. Now you can see it's starting slightly to separate. So the buttermilk will come away from the cream. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is because I don't have a massive volume. To allow it to gather more into one end and should whisk a little quicker for me. So if you have any questions, pop them up. Watching with me, my 6-year-old. Great history lesson, no problem. Love your apron. Yeah. I took a bit of work to find one of these. I have it a few years. I think I got this in a shop in Loughrea. Is there a traditional haberdashery shop maybe in Loughrea where I ordered it, paid for it and they kindly sent it out to me? Very hard to actually find a wraparound apron. There's not too many of them, but my grandmother would have worn one. She also wore a house coat, and yeah, they were very useful because your clothes were completely covered with them. For the kids that have never seen a wraparound apron, so it literally does what it says. So it wraps around your thread. The string goes out to the back. This section comes across and you tie it at the back then. So they were a good apron, they were well designed, very practical, saved your clothes, comfortable enough to wear I suppose as well, so they had their uses. Yeah, so we're working here as fast as we can. It is a slow process, but it is getting there. and then we have to wash it. So this morning we showed you cutting grass with a scythe. Today we're churning, afternoon we're churning butter. And every job that was done wasn't mechanised in it at a time. And even washing clothes, we do have an original washboard here. I don't have a galvanised bath. I would love to find one. And a bar of carbolic soap, and that's what you use to do your washing. So you did everything by hand, and it was quite labour intensive, but then women didn't go out to work, they stayed at home and they looked after the family, they did the housework. They had days set aside for each job. You had a day, well, most days you made bread, you had a day for butter making and a day for washing clothes, and you helped out on the farm, and maybe the woman fed the pigs, and the chickens on the farm were usually the woman's domain. A lot of the time the eggs, the money for the eggs was kept by the woman for treats for herself or for something for the house. So they had a system, and we're nearly there. So I'm just going to take a peek in. Yeah, we're almost there. So if we can lift it up, you can see that it's getting quite yellow, and the butter is starting to form in it. So before my arm falls off, I'll do another bit. So it's lovely to actually get the opportunity to share and recreate exactly what the people were doing in previous generations. So we're almost there. You can see how much watery liquid is in it. So that's my buttermilk, so I have to strain that off, and I'm going to taste it because I've never actually, in all the times I've made butter, I've never actually drank it. So I have my mug and I'm going to taste it. So I'm going to try and bring the butter together now. It should form into almost a lump in it. So at some stage we will take out the separator, and there is an end over end churn, and we will show you them what they look like, and you can imagine how heavy they were. In other places then, if you were very well off and making a lot of butter, you could have a horse driven churn, and in later times churns were driven by a motor. So people slowly moved towards mechanization and away from the heavy work this was. So there we go, we have our butter and our buttermilk. So let me see, I have a container on the ground, and I'm going to pop that in there, and I have some water in that, and that's clean water, so we'll just put it there. Now, and I'm going to pour my buttermilk in here. So the easiest way for me to do it is with a strainer, so I'll bring this over and show you. So I'm going to use the crock just to strain my buttermilk into it. I did wash it out this morning, so it's nice and clean. So there's my buttermilk. And the butter is staying in the churn, so I'll drain off as much as I can. Because the next part is we have to use water. We'll hop it out. I have to use water to wash the last of the buttermilk out of the butter. So, that's the buttermilk removed. My butter is in the sieve, some of it. And the remainder is in the jar. So I'm going to put all, I have a nice big bowl. I would love an enamel one at some stage if I can get my hands on one. But this does the job perfectly. So I've put in the first of the butter, and I'm going to empty out the rest of it out of the churn. Some of it doesn't want to leave. Let me see. Okay. My spatula is a bit modern looking. Wooden spoon would have looked more authentic, but anyway. There we go. So that's the butter. I'll pop that. I have a table here beside me. Nothing broke, okay. My table collapsed, but nothing broke. So we're good. So now we have the butter in the bowl, and the next job I have to do is I have to wash the butter. Love the crossover bit. Yeah, these old wraparound aprons were deadly. So there's another little bit of buttermilk after coming off that, so I'm just going to pour that off. much buttermilk out as we can. Now, I am going to taste the buttermilk. Don't really like a lot of dairy, but it actually tastes very similar to low-fat milk, which is what low-fat milk actually is. Because with low-fat milk, most of the cream has been removed. So it's quite nice. It's nice taste of it. It just tastes like a nice low-fat cream or low-fat milk. So the next thing I have to do is wash my butter. So I just pour some cold water in on top of it. And this is from our spring well. I take one of the spades and I wash the butter. And because butter is an oil, it's fat, it won't mix with the water, so it's quite fine to put water into it. So you can see, if I hold it up, you can see where it's almost milky. That's because the buttermilk, the remainder of it, is washing out of the butter. Normally we give it 2 or 3 washes till it's clear, then we salt it and we give it the last wash. Now it's quite warm in here today for making butter. Traditionally you would have had a dairy, it was a stone building on the shaded end of the house or on somewhere in the farm, and it would, excuse me, it would be in a cool room onto the house with normally with a stone slab on it, so everything would have been kept cold for butter making. It's hard to do butter making in really cold weather, and it's equally as hard to do it in warm weather. In cold weather it takes longer to churn the milk, and in warm weather it churns faster, but it's hard to get the butter washed, it's quite soft. You could add some ice cubes to the water or chilled water, it would firm up the butter a little bit. So there we are on the second wash, and the water is almost clean. We'll just work our way through it another little bit. And we straighten that off. Now at this stage we can salt our butter. If we didn't want to, we could leave it unsalted, which you could use for making shortbread and for cooking. Because some of this is actually going to Alan's mum and we'll use it in the house, I'm going to salt it. So I'm going to sprinkle a nice amount of salt off it, onto it, work it into it. And then wash it again. So what I'm actually doing is washing it the third time, and this will remove a good percentage of the salt and just leave a slight salty flavour off it. Salt would have also helped to preserve it, so that's why butter was salted more. Salt was necessary for preserving the butter. Even bacon that was cured in salt, it preserved the bacon. So salt was a preservative. And possibly that's part of the reason why we developed a taste for salt in our food and on our potatoes and on the different things, because of the tradition of having salty food when it was being preserved with salt. So that's it. Salt is washed back out, and we're ready now to use the spades to take the remainder of the buttermilk once I drain it. So I'm just going to clean them off. I'm going to drain it for the last time. Now, I'm going to get 2 clean spades. So, these spades, when you look at them, they have ridges on them. And the purpose of the ridges is to take the remaining moisture out of the butter. So you took the butter and you pat it between the 2 spades. Quite enjoyable doing this. And at this stage you could make your shapes with the butter, so if you were good at it, you could roll this into a nice little butter ball between the two pats. And mine is a bit soft this morning because of the heat here in the room. We'll see if we can do. So you could make different shapes by rolling the butter. I'll get a smaller bit. So you could make your little ball of butter by rolling it between your pats, and you put that on your plate then, and that was your decorative little roll of butter, ball of butter to serve. Or you could make it into a roll or whatever you wanted. But I'm actually going to pop it into the mould that I have here, and I'm going to use that today to shape it so we can go for a bigger bit. And again we repeat the process, and we slap it. And if you were here beside me, you could see little blobs of water falling out of it. As I said, I'd prefer if it was colder to work with. And that one's done. The more that you hit it with it, the more moisture you take out of it, the more buttermilk you release, the longer your butter will last. But your fresh butter will last in the fridge for approximately a week. So that is our butter making. When I'm finished, I'm putting it into the mould. I'll take it out and we'll get a look at it. You could make little curls and different shaped rolls and different things with your butter, with your pats if you were used to using them. It's been probably a year or more since I used them. The last time I did this was actually in a nursing home. So till this evening, we're going to do a little bit of finger knitting. Show you how that's done. All you need is a ball of wool to do that one. You don't need needles or anything. So till this evening, hopefully some of you will try making butter, and let me know how you get on. Any questions, pop them up. I'll go through any messages or questions that have been left for me, and I will see you all at 8 o'clock tonight. So till then, thank you very much for joining us. And how long can you freeze it? I believe you can freeze butter. Now I would imagine that most things can be frozen for 6 months or more, and once you take them out and fully defrost them. But if you're going to do it with your food mixer, you're going to only get, I'm only going to have just over a pound of butter out of this. So you wouldn't be making large volumes if you're making it at home. So probably when you start using it, you'll get through it quite quickly and you can use it to bake. Did you not have to use a churn? I did. You missed that bit, Eleanor. If you go back to the video, I used a churn at the start. So you can use a churn or use a food mixer, whichever you're going to do. So till this evening, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the butter making, and we'll see you tonight.